Hi friends, I'm Abby and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing the next part in my little video series on hyped books, underhyped books, worth the hype, the actual series. So 2 parts have come out already, which was underhyped books and books that deserve more hype, as well as some overhyped ones that I do not think are worth it. Today's video is books that I think are worth the hype, that they get a lot of praise and they get a lot of people talking about them, and I personally think that they are worth it, that I enjoy these books. I think that there is a valid reason for these to be talked about, and I completely agree with all of the hype that these books get. And obviously it's not limited to these books. There are plenty of very hyped books and books that get a lot of love that I'm not mentioning at all here today. This is just a select few. Where to start? Okay, I've decided I'm going to do this roughly in publication order. Yeah, that's a bit fun. That's a bit different. Publication order. It might get harder as we go on, as I forget the publication dates and not too sure which ones come first, but roughly publication order. So, The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. I think this is so worth the hype. This is so good. This is so good. So if you don't know, The Hobbit is like a kid's story and a prequel to The Lord of the Rings. It did come out first, and this you're following a main character, Bilbo, and he is a hobbit, and he ends up on a quest to defeat Smaug the dragon and to help the dwarves reclaim their home that Smaug has taken over. And it sets up for The Lord of the Rings. So I reread this last year. I think Night Circus does an excellent job with the audiobooks. So he narrates this and he's done a narration for The Lord of the Rings, and I'm currently on the 3rd book. I haven't started it yet, but I've listened to this, Fellowship, Two Towers, and I've got Return of the King to go. But I think this is so worth it. Like, this is really fun. It's fun. And I think it's a fun narration. I think it's a fun story. I think it works for both adults and kids. And I do think that this and The Lord of the Rings is worth it. Like, I can understand why it's got the hype that it does. I can understand why it gets raved about. People read it, they enjoy it. So I completely get why The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings is hyped. And it is a grounding block for fantasy as well. That a lot of our modern fantasy that we read today is inspired by this. So as well as being a great story in and of itself, it is also the grounding block for many other fantasy works. So I think this is completely worth it. All right, I think this one came next. So one that I don't own here, it's back at my parents because I read it a few years ago, is A Song of Ice and Fire, or Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. Probably one that was inspired by The Lord of the Rings. So I think this is worth it. I have read the whole of the 5 books that are published. I'm not sure if I'm going to actually continue on with the series because it has been 10 years since I read those 5 books, and I don't know if I feel like I don't feel as though I want to reread if and ever the 6th book ever comes out. If it came out at the time that I read those 5 books, I would have read it, but it's been so long now, I'm not sure if that's actually going to happen. But I do still think it's worth it. Like, I think they are worth the hype. I think they are really solid books, at least from my memory. I mean, this was 10 years ago, but from memory, I think they were very well written books. I think they were well done. I think I enjoyed the multiple perspectives. I think they've got really interesting characters. The world, I really like the world. The TV show, I think is good. I think it's a really good TV show, aside from the final season. Like, I think a very, very solid adaptation of the books. I think it's got lots of intrigue, lots of like twists and turns as the plot moves along. Lots of aspects which are interesting to focus on. So I think A Song of Ice and Fire is worth it. It's just a shame that we don't have the 6th and 7th book to know how it would wrap up. But I do think there's so much lore in that world, the history, so much is made up of that world, that I know he's like written a whole history. I haven't read Fire and Blood, but there is like a whole history of the world. Like, there is so much detail and depth in that world. So I definitely think that one is worth it as well. I'm not too sure. Okay, I have 2 now and I'm not too sure which one came first. Toss of the coin. So next I've got The Hunger Games. The Hunger Games, the whole trilogy is worth it. It is. It really, really is. Again, I don't have an edition with me because I read it years ago. But that as a dystopian YA trilogy, it's really good. It's strong as a trilogy. Like, the way that it it engages readers, and the way that it progresses. Like, it's a dark dystopian world, and I guess it was written like at the time that dystopian was a big thing. It was a really big thing at the time that it was written, and when the films were coming out. But I was addicted to those books. I remember, I think I was like 16 when I read them. I remember being on the bus to school, reading those books and being addicted to those books. And then I like finished reading all three, and then I instantly started listening to the audiobooks, and I started listening to the whole trilogy again, because I just enjoyed it. I just enjoyed being in that world. And then I think I must have read it again after that. Like, I read it quite a few times, like, at that time. And I think it was really, really well done. I think they were well written. I liked the character dynamics. The love triangle, I don't know how I would feel about it today, but I was always Team Peter, still am Team Peter, Team Peter. I have some faults with the third book, more just upset over some character deaths, and I don't know if I'll ever get over them, because it's just not fair. It's just not right. But I think they're well paced. I enjoyed the action. Like, I think they're just great solid books. So I would definitely say that they're worth the hype. And then the one that I was unsure on which came first between The Hunger Games and this one, and that is the Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, which I read when it came out originally, so again quite a few years ago. And for me, that book is worth the hype. I know that it gets talked about quite a bit. So it's one of those books which I think is really hard to recommend, because you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. And that's fine. I fell on the side of loving it. Obviously, when I read it when it was very, like, as soon as it was published. I remember my mum got it for me. She had read an advanced copy of it because she worked in a bookstore at that time. So I was reading it with zero expectations, aside from knowing that my mum had liked it. Like, zero. I didn't know anything about it. Hadn't had anyone talking about it, because the Booknet, I don't think, was really a thing at that time. Like, I just read it and enjoyed the story for what it was. And this, you're following two magicians and their proteges, and they have put their proteges against each other, and they are creating these magical events or like tents for this circus. And the circus arrives every night, and you don't quite know where the circus is going to be, and you follow the circus as it journeys around, and you follow these characters. And I think if you're not swept up in like the setting and these characters, then you're not going to enjoy it, because it's not the most plot heavy book. It is more focused on the circus as a circus and the characters and their dynamics. But I loved it. I was really addicted to it. I think I raced through that book. People say it's slow paced. It wasn't for me. I was like just racing through, like addicted to knowing what was going to happen. But I know that I like her writing style. Like, I've enjoyed the Night Circus. I enjoyed the Starless Sea. Whereas some people, it doesn't work for them. And that's just like, that's why I find it's really hard to recommend. For me, it's completely worth the hype. But I can understand why it wouldn't be worth the hype for others, because her writing style is so unique, and it will either work for you or it won't. Moving into some more recent releases and some recent books that have got some more hype. One that came out a couple of years ago is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, and I know the sequel to this is coming out next year in 2023. Finally, after this came out like 2019, 2018, 2019, so this is 3 years old. It's been a long time, well, not a long time, but it's been quite a while between publications of a first book and a sequel. When I read this, I loved this. This is my favourite Leigh Bardugo. I've read all of the Grishaverse. I don't think I've missed one. And I've read this, and this is my favourite out of all of her publications, probably because it's an adult book, and as a demographic, that's generally what I prefer. I really like this. This you're following a main character, Alex Stern, and she has been enrolled into Yale, not as a normal student, but because she has these powers to be able to see ghosts. And so she is part of this society which control or monitor the other secret societies at Yale, and making sure that they are not doing anything clandestine with the powers that they have. And because she's able to see ghosts, that is an aspect that gives her a greater ability to be able to do this monitoring. And you follow, it's in multiple timelines, and you follow her, and you follow Darlington, I think his name is, her mentor. And there's this sort of murder mystery plot going on, that there has been a murder, and it's been written off as just a normal routine murder. That sounds really bad, but like nothing sinister has gone on, but actually Alex believes that there has been more to it. And I really, really like this. I'm actually looking forward to rereading this now that we have a date for the sequel, because I will definitely reread, because it's been like, it'll be like 4 years, 3-4 years since this came out when I read it. And for me, this was completely worth the hype. Again, I feel as though this gets mixed reception, which I think is quite common for like hyped books, that you end up having a lot of hype, lots of people read it, and then because so many people read it, you get so many diverse opinions on the book, because so many people have read it and so many people have talked about it, that you're going to have diverse opinions on it. You're not going to have a book that's just routinely loved. I really, really like this, and I really hope Waterstones do this sort of edition again, where they'd have a breadth of colour, because that's what this is. It's a Waterstones edition, and I really like this like blue to black, and instead of just a plain black cover. So I really hope they do something similar with the next book. Then Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I think as a whole, Andy Weir is worth the hype. I have read all three of his published books. I've read this, Artemis, and The Martian. The Martian and Project Hail Mary, I think, are worth it. Artemis, I wasn't too much of a fan of. I think he writes better male characters than female characters, that they're much more realistic. The Martian and this, definitely worth the hype. This one, I liked it a lot more than I thought I was going to. That I liked The Martian, but I think this is better. I think this is his best work, and that's predominantly due to both the characters and the plot. And in this, you are following Grace. I was about to say Grace Ryland. No, right. This you're following Ryland Grace, and he has woken up on a spaceship in space, and he doesn't have any memory of how he got there. And the crewmates that he is with are dead. So he is trying to figure out what's going on. What's he doing on this spaceship? Why he's there? And you follow two timelines. You follow the timeline of him in space, discovering what's going on and what's happening, and then you follow the timeline on Earth, where he is building up to where they're building up to this space mission. And I think my favourite part was the bit where he was in space and him trying to figure out what was going on. And then about 150 pages in, there is a shift in the dynamic of the plot. I can't go into it because it's a spoiler, and at least I loved not knowing what it was. But from that point onwards, I was hooked even more from having that shift. I would definitely recommend this if you like a standalone sci-fi, fun, fast-paced, engaging read, then I would definitely recommend it. I read this physically, but I've also heard really good things about the audiobook and how that is excellently done. And another 2021 release that I think is worth the hype is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This is a contemporary romance where you're following Olive and Adam. Olive is a PhD student and Adam is a professor, not for her, but for other members of her field. So they are a student teacher, but there isn't like any power dynamics. It's a Grumpy Sunshine, fake dating in the STEM field, and I just really liked it. I really liked these two characters. I liked the dynamics. I liked seeing the STEM setting. I don't know that much about the science field. I mean, I studied science in school, but I haven't studied science since then, so my knowledge of what STEM is like is pretty limited. So it was interesting to see that and seeing what it's like for a female in this workplace. And I could not put this book down. I couldn't put this down. So for me, it was completely worth the hype. I guess I read it relatively soon after its publications, so it didn't have as much hype as it might have now, but I thoroughly enjoyed it and would say it's completely worth it. Completely worth it. And then the final book that I think is worth the hype, or at least for this list, because I'm sure there are so many other books that are definitely worth the hype, and that is the Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. This is the adult fairy edition, which is very pretty, very pretty. This was a self-published book, which actually, that's the edition I read was self-published. Oh, it's on the above shelf. And yeah, so this is a self-published book following multiple perspectives in this Alexandrian society. So in this world you can have magic, and this society goes and finds like the best and the brightest magicians of that era and trains 6 of them, knowing that after their first year only 5 of them can go forward within this society. And you are following all 6 of these characters through their training and through learning about their magic, and it's very dark academia. You do follow the year pass quite quickly. I would say that none of the characters are especially likable. I think they're all very interesting, but I wouldn't say they're the most likable of characters. But I found it very intriguing, and definitely one to like that got me thinking, I would say. I'm definitely intrigued to reread it, and when I do, I want to read this published edition, because I know that quite a few changes were made from the self-published to this one, just in terms of the stylistics of it, and there was more editing done to it. So it'll be interesting to see how I feel about this version that is published now. But I think it's worth it. Like, I didn't give this a full 5 stars, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun book. I think I gave it 4 stars, and I was definitely engaged with it. And I'm definitely intrigued to keep going with the series. For me, I think I'm going to delay until the 3rd and final book comes out. So I won't read the second one on publication. I will wait, and then I will do a bit of a binge when the 3rd book comes out. But for me, this was totally worth it, and I would recommend it. So there are a few books that I think are worth the hype, that I completely get why people talk about them, why they get recommended, why people are reading them, and why people are talking about them and gushing about them on the internet. Like, these ones, I get it, I understand. Compared to the video that I posted where I don't understand the hype, these ones I completely do get it, and I would agree. Let me know some books that you think are worth the hype, that you have enjoyed, that you think are really popular, and they're really popular for a reason. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my future videos. Bye!